Good morning, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is a watermelon packing shed here in the country for a farmer. So all we're gonna do is a roof system. Let's build it. And what he has ordered is the PBR screw down system, common metal building panel that you see on about every metal building wall there is. For this size shelter, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd go with the standing seam double lock because you have a lot of movement. It's going to be 65 feet from eave to ridge. You're going to have at least a ½ inch to almost 3/4 of a growth a day. So 5 to 10 years we're going to have leaks start popping up because the movement of that metal is going to waller out those screws. Very bad design on warehouses, but it's been used for years. Now we have the standing seam metal roofs, which work a lot better. Right now we're working on frames, just getting started. These frames, the manufacturer punched the holes in our columns in the wrong place. So we got these 3 columns set, we had to take them down. We're gonna drill the holes, put them up, get started on this base. I just brought 3 guys with me today, get everything laid out, make sure everything works. I've got some links in the description below. Kind of helps out the channel if you ever wanna order some of these tools. Use those links. They give me a little bit, charge you no extra. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, please drop them down in the comments. Get those first 4 columns. Because we don't have everybody here, we want to tie all this off just in case a storm blows up, we get rained out, we have to go home. But as always, we put everything finger tight, then we square the building and come back and tighten all the bolts at the same time. But because this building is so massive, well, not massive, but bigger than usual, and we have less labor here and won't get as much done during the day as we usually do with the whole crew. What we'll do is we're going to work on 2 bays today. This building is a 60 wide on the main shelter. We're adding lean-tos of 30 foot or 32 foot on each side, so the whole building will be 125 by 125. We're back here today getting started on phase 2, and what we're going to do is work on the main shelter today. We hang these rafters. We like to do all the little prep work as we can. We're going to go ahead and add these flange braces in before we hang the rafter. Sometimes with scissor lifts they get in the way, so you got to be careful and not raise the scissor lift too high and bend them. But at least they're already there, they're out of our way. We don't have to go back around because the scissor lifts move so slow when they're up high. It just takes a lot longer. Now we knock these out here in like 2 minutes. We hang the rafter. As we're hanging the purlins, we just add those in. That kind of stabilizes this first bay, helps us to build off of it. Sometimes these rafters want to roll way out or way in. This one's built pretty stout, being it's a 60 foot wide. We ain't got much sway. We're not going to have a lot to worry about. One thing to remember when lifting this rafter with these straps is you always keep those forks level. A lot of people want to tilt them all the way up. Well, what you do when you tilt them all the way up, that's okay, as long as you run that strap all the way to the back to the lowest part of the fork. Because if you got your straps out in the middle of your fork and you tilt it up and then something happens and that thing slides, then that rafter is going to fall. It won't fall all the way, but it may fall 3 or 4 feet. And if you got a man up here in the basket, 3 or 4 feet may mean a finger, a leg, or an arm, or a head, and we don't want to kill anybody. since we're not gonna hang the beam, and I've forked it from above, from up under, and because of this 112, you see I raised to the high side first, not to the low side. Don't let that guy grab it. It just gets more dangerous. So if I get to the high side, he spuds it. It's gonna be touching at the bottom, because here's the levelness of your post, and your rafter has that pitch on it. Until you let it down, it won't close. So if he'll get a spud in that top and then get a bolt in the second hole at the top, then it won't slide off the forks as I come down. It's a 112, it probably won't slide anyway, but you know, when you got that much weight on the side of a fork, with just one fork, it won't have both of the forks on the beam. When you let down, let him get a bolt at the high side first. Let that rafter come down slowly, and then he'll put a spud in, get your bolts. So what we like to do is we'll get those holes lined up. What he's doing is just snugging one bolt. He squares that plate up with that column, snugs that one bolt, then he can put all of his other ones in. Ideally you want to just put them all in finger tight, but you got so much weight with that beam, it sways, it's hanging in the air, it's not in ideal conditions. So he's going to use that bolt, pull that column close to that rafter. He doesn't have to get it tight, but if his column and his plate on his rafter is perfect, go ahead and tighten it, and then all your other holes will work. Get all your bolts in, as long as that lift holds it until you get more than half of your bolts tightened. But I like to get them all tight before I let that rafter loose. We got that whole lean-to up on the other side yesterday. Went ahead and put our cables in, got our corners plumb, and then we built this bay off here today. I just decided to come on down and add this lean-to in. Back for day 3 on this 125 by 125. What we've got now is we've got all of our purlins up in our frames. My goal today is to get the frame square and the corners plumb. I got the plate level by Stabila, and this is 7-foot extendable to 12-foot. We've got this first lean-to that we installed the first day. We've got it square and plumb as we need it, so I hope that'll help us to build off of it. Now we're going to go back and tweak the middle main shelter part of it, the 60 by 125, and the other lean-to. We'll use those cables in the roof. We don't have cables in the walls because this is open shelter and the owner wants to access all bays. And we should have had a portal frame or a main frame, I mean a wind column throughout this structure, but it wasn't in the design, so all I can do is install it the way it was designed. So I'm going to use some temporary strapping for X's in the middle of the bays on the wall, or what would be the walls, and then I'll square my roof off of that. To get that roof to run square, I have to square this frame. And in the beginning of my career, and I had no teacher, what we would do is just make the roof line up with the structure, and I made a lot of mistakes, and it would show up in your roofing, and it especially shows up in your rake trims. So you want to have that roof square. What I found is that on my lean-to columns, each corner is leaning out and touching the line on the level, or not quite touching the line, almost, but they're almost touching the line the same amount, but they're leaning opposite ways. My center columns, I've got 4 that are perfectly plumb, and 2 of them are leaning one way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that alone, because one corner is exactly plumb and 3 of the other columns are exactly plumb. And if I move those off of plumb, then to get the other 2 plumb, then I'm just going to create a problem. So because we squared and plumbed that first lean-to that day, and now we built off of it, it's pretty much holding our other side where it needs to be. So I'm going to leave those alone, and now I'll start squaring my roof. Before we start tightening anything on those cables, we go around and make sure our hillside washers, and we like to call them a moon. It's just something the guys picked up. We'll make sure all those hillside washers are in our holes correctly. They have a little catch on one side, so when you pull those cables, those threads on the eye bolt will be able to move freely and you can tighten them up. If you do not have that hillside washer attached correctly or installed correctly, then your threads scrape the side of the holes in the beam. It'll wear those threads out, and then you'll have no luck in tightening the nut on the eye bolt. Got all of our columns and our corners plumb. Now we're going to start on squaring this roof. And I got back outside the building and looked at it, and they all look straight. But to be sure, and to keep those rake trims square with my panels, and to get my panels started right and square so I can do a layout and have those panels stay on a 3-foot interval, what we're doing is we're coming over here to the low eave side, putting a string from the eave all the way to the ridge. And what we done is we measured in 6 inches, and we're running that string on top of the purlins, and we're putting a block under them. That way the string doesn't touch any purlins in the middle. And we started with 6 inches because we got a 2-inch overhang with the purlins, and the rafter is 4 inches thick. That way I can walk down, and I mean, my man's gonna run down in the scissor lift and check it with a measuring tape, but I usually can look at it a lot faster than my guys can measure. So I done it at 6 inches. That way it should line up with the inside of that rafter frame, and then I can see what's happening. We've got 6 inches here on the low side eave. We went to the center main frame, and on top of that purlin we measured in 6 inches, but we didn't stop the string. We ran the string all the way to the ridge, measured in 6 inches. And I'm gonna pull and move this ridge in or out until I cross the 6-inch measurement that I have here, because I know these two, this column and that column is plumb, and I don't want to pull them in or out with the ridge. I want to move the ridge. The ridge is something I can't plumb off of. If I had walls on this building, usually I would have a column somewhere here, either in the center or 2 on each side, and then I could use my level to plumb those. And if I check both ends of the building and they were both plumbed, then I know my roof is square. But in this situation, I have no columns to plumb off of, so I ran that string here. And if I get that string from ridge to eave straight, and I get the same measurement here at this column, that column and the ridge 6 inches in, that rafter should be straight, and it should be 6 inches in to my string. And that's just, the 6 inches is not a measurement that you have to go by. It's just something that I went by to measure off of. As long as we keep that same distance, we've got a straight line when we run our panels, because this will be 30 foot, and that's 32.6 from there to the lean-to side. So we're going to have 2 different panels from eave to ridge. We've got a lap, and when you lap an end lap on panels, it's very easy to get off and keep them not lined up. So I'll use that string and those marks the same when I do my layout and get my first one measured off of that string. See, I'll measure on over another 30 inches or 31.2 inches to get to the side of my panel, because my panel is 3 foot wide. I'll mark those purlins. We'll start that first panel with that string, keeping it straight, and then lay out the rest of the building all the way to the other end. And as long as we stay on layout, it'll run square, it'll stay square.